yeah, I can see the background behind you, that gorgeous fuchsia bush and all of the green. And it's making me so hungry to come and be at Earth Heart at this amazing place that you've created. Um, yes, I need to come and visit soon.
Yes.
So you and I go way back. I've done a lot of work with you, starting off in 2015 with Initiation, your women's year long, and then the couples year long with Aid when we were going through infertility, and loads of other stuff. It's great to be talking to you today about, yeah, I mean, there's so much we could speak about, and we will do a whole episode about, I think, the menstrual cycle and your approach to it and your understanding of the ancient teachings of this land when it comes to the menstrual cycle. But today our topic is menopause, and you're obviously in your post-menopause life now. So to walk us into this, we'll do a cycle check-in, but a post-menopause cycle check-in. How is your cyclicity in this phase of your life?
So it's interesting because the thing I noticed the most when I stopped bleeding was there was just this complete panic, because I was like, how do I anchor myself? How do I orientate my month? What am I going to do now? How am I going to, because, if I've just got lots of energy, why not keep going? Why not just do this and that? And when will I create a drop for myself? When will I go in? And it's been quite a journey, actually, because I do feel very influenced by the moon. There's no question about that. But it doesn't necessarily take me into, ooh, I really want to go in deep now. I really want to go inside. Not if I'm at the middle of a festival or, it's a beautiful summer's day. So I'm lucky because I've got the Earth Lodge here. So I tend to do that. I tend to just go into the Earth Lodge, because even if it's super bright and sunny outside and hot, the Earth Lodge is always dark. She's sort of carved into the side of the hill. It's got this womb-like holding. So as soon as I go in there, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, here we are. And then I find myself, and then I just maybe light a fire and spend the night in there, or just spend a few hours in there. And it really, really helps to just reorientate me and remind me of how important that drop is.
That's amazing. So whenever you feel that you need, like, quote unquote, a menstrual drop,
Yes.
you go into the Earth Lodge.
I
Can you
go.
tell us a bit about the Earth Lodge? Can you sort of paint the picture of it for
Yeah,
people
so
who
so the
haven't
Earth
seen it?
Lodge came into being because I was having this womb divination with a friend of mine, and I sort of, what I call, downloaded, it's sort of something came through. I downloaded that I was supposed to be creating these womb pods on the land for women to go and bleed into. And there was like 7 of these pods, and they were like little, one woman pods, where you could go in and it would be dark, and we'd bring you food, and you could just really, really crawl into the earth. And I came out
Sounds
of that.
amazing.
I know, and I came out of that going, 7 pods. Like, how am I gonna do that? It was just felt like overwhelming. So I went back and did another journey, and then we got to this one huge womb pod, which is basically what the Earth Lodge is. And then it was like, how am I going to create this? How am I going to create this? And then this amazing sequence of events happened, where a friend of mine was meant to be running a project to build a roundhouse with 24 people who'd kind of signed up to do that, to learn how to do it. So he called me literally and said, can we come to your land? Our land has fallen through. And I was like, the timing, because I'd literally just had this whole kind of download. So we just went for it. And it was built in ceremony with this amazing guy called Tony Wrench, who lives in a roundhouse. And so it took like about a couple of weeks. And every morning we'd do this song and this dance. And then we, built it in this ceremonial way. And we laid the ground first of all. And it was just so powerful to see what would happen when you brought a group of people together. And as soon as it was built, I was just like, this was before my menopause. I was just coming into it. I thought, I know where I'm going to spend my menopause. Because as soon as I went in and I lit the fire, I was like, oh, thank God, I know I can be in here. And I could feel the ancestors there, and I could feel, like that veil, the way we talk about the veil being really thin. It was like, as soon as I walked in the door, it's like, oh, I'm on the other side. Here I am. And yeah, it's just been so powerful. And I did spend a lot of my menopause in there, and without it, I think I might have gone slightly bonkers, actually.
And it is such an amazing space because it has these two bits of wood coming up to the entranceway, and then it has the skull. Is it a big stag?
It's a wild boar skull, and then
Yeah.
there's the two stag antlers on the outside. Yeah.
And then you come in, and it is like going through a birth canal into a womb, and then you're in the earth, and there's the spiraling wooden beams rising up, and then the smoke goes up through them. And I remember Ada and I coming to see you at a time when we were really low. The infertility was just breaking us down, breaking us up. And you probably didn't know what to do with us, really, a couple of weepy, grumpy people. But you took us into the womb lodge, into the Earth Lodge, I call it a womb lodge. And you just lit a fire and you just started singing. And I started singing with you, and Aid's a bit more shy, so he didn't really sing, but he just sat and enjoyed it. And it just feels timeless. It feels like remembering that we're part of something on this land. The people have been doing this forever. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, exactly. We would have had those lodges where the women could have gathered, and like you say, without this spiritual dimension to what we're doing in terms of our wombs and how we're living, we are going to feel lost and disconnected.
Let's talk about your menopause experience as a way into this conversation, because there's loads we want to talk about. We're going to talk about like your menopause sabbatical. We're going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about how nature can support us through menopause. There's lots we're going to explore. But I would love to start at the moment that I think of as the beginning of your menopause process, but tell me if I'm wrong. When you were sitting in the temple at Earth Heart and you looked out at a tree outside the window, and the tree said something quite shocking to you.
Yes, that was a really key moment, but it feels like important just to go back a little bit and get the context, because I was your classic textbook superwoman. While I was a bleeding woman, I was like, the workshops were back to back, and I was just out there, and I had this absurd amount of energy, and I was just like, I've got to change the world, and I got to like help all the women and bring them all. I can hold it all. I can, and on this huge mission, which I'm still on. But, and I just felt like my body was invincible. I really felt like my body was invincible, and I started to feel tired, and I was a bit like, no, I don't do tired. I'm Jewels. I don't do tired. No. My body's always delivered the energy I need and the energy I want. And I started, and the workshops were running and the trainings were running, and I noticed more and more I was sitting in circle, just feeling, having thoughts like, I don't care what's going on. I just I've got compassion fatigue. It's like I just don't feel like I can sit here and support you. I just don't feel like I've got the resources. And it got worse and worse. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm actually sitting here going, oh God, you know what? I just don't even want to be in the room. I just don't want to sit here in this circle. I can't give you what you want. And I was like, oh, maybe my career, my purpose, my calling, maybe it's all over, maybe I'm done, that's it, I've lost my touch, I'm just not passionate about it anymore. I was having this went on for about a year, and I was a bit freaked out, because I was like, but I've just created Earth Heart, I've done all this stuff. It's like I've finally come into my prime. I've spent 20 years building myself. Really, is it my body, the symptoms in my body was just getting worse and worse. My kidneys were getting really bad, and I was just tired all the time. I was like literally resting between every circle. Like lunch break, I'd go and lie down for an hour. Afternoon tea break, I'd go, and normally I'd be chatting to everyone and going for a walk, and I was just like, what is going on? And then we were sitting in the temple space, end of one workshop, and we were sitting there and we were doing sort of closing circle. Everyone was sort of, just bringing things to a close. And I was looking out at the forest, because you got the whole forest view. And there's this one beech tree, which I'm very close to. And I've always talked to trees, and trees have always talked to me ever since I was little. So having a tree talk to me wasn't particularly unusual. But I was looking at the beech tree, and we were just sort of having this moment. And it was just coming into autumn. So the leaves were starting to fall. And I was just sort of, yeah, okay, the tree's turning. It's that autumn time. And then I was sitting there looking at the tree, and literally the tree spoke to me and just said, "You're going to die this winter." And this rush of adrenaline that just went through my body, this absolute fear, because where I went was, oh my goodness, the trees just told me I've got cancer, I've got some sort of terminal illness, I'm going to have a car accident, something's happened. I thought literally I'm going to die. So I sort of turned back to the group. I was like, oh my God, like I got to be present here. We're just winding up this workshop, but I've just been told I'm going to die. Total. So we kind of, pulled the workshop together and, said everyone goodbye. And then I thought, right, okay, there's something here. So I went and sat by the tree and spent some time and just sort of went, okay, what's going on? And it became really clear that what was being shown to me was a spiritual death, a death of the way I had been operating in my life, a movement from being an ovulating, cycling, bleeding woman, basically, that menopause transition, and that there was this spiritual death coming, this death of the old way of being, that I clearly couldn't keep operating the way I had. In this superwoman paradigm, in this I can be everything to everyone, I can fix and sort everyone, I can help everyone, don't say no to any woman, however broken she is, just bring her into the nest and I'll hold it all. And it was, and so then I sat there and I had this conversation with this tree, and I did a bit of a yeah, but no, but you don't understand. I've just invested my life, my lifelong earnings. I've come from nothing, and I've just created this incredible place for people to come. And you're saying now it's like it's all over. You've got to stop this. You can't carry on. I was like, and so it was sort of, the message that was coming back is you've got to take 13 moons out and literally do nothing. You've got to flatline. I was like,
wow.
Yeah, but you can't, no. Like, I have a project that costs £50,000 to £60,000 a year just to maintain at a baseline level. I've got all these people who rely on me for support and help. I've got these trainings. I've got a daughter who depends on me. I've got I can't just take 13 moons out. Who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to, all of this? So, a little bit of just.
I remember when it happened, and you were like, right, because I think you and I we were doing some planning work together or something. And you were like, right, everything that we've been planning, I'm going to take 13 months off. And I was just like, gulp. Okay, how is this going to happen? But you made it happen.
Well, yeah. So then I obviously I took that to my sister circle and was kind of, I don't want to just, but they really helped me, and without them, I don't think I'd have been able to really, that was the power of having this support of my women's sister circle who, where I could talk through it all, thrash it all out and go, well, I wonder what does that actually really look like and what do I need to do? And they were really, really supportive, and that felt really, really key. And so basically I got a caravan and I put it down on the land right in the very, very far bottom. So basically I was in the forest, kind of away from everything. And I made this kind of den space in the forest. I made a bit of a temporary shelter and, and I had sort of like little kind of bivouac tarpaulin. And I made a nest, in the caravan and in the forest. And I just said, okay, for the next 13 moons, I'm just going to let go of everything I thought I was, everything I think I'm about, everything I thought I wanted to do, really look at how am I running my life? How do I use my energy? What if I just carry on like I am? What does that mean for my body? It's like my body was literally just packing up. My kidneys were flatlining.
Yeah.
And I thought, I can't carry on like this. But if I don't do this purpose that I've spent my entire life from like age 5, age 16, kind of being guided for and being guided to do, like, who am I? Like, I can't just sit around and eat food, and how will I survive? All of these questions were coming. And I just kept taking them to the night, taking them to the fire, you know, and asking those really, really difficult questions, and you know, pounding my fists on the ground and being really angry and spending all night pacing up and down in the forest and sitting by the fire and crying and grieving, and you know, the whole lot, and having to really, really, really just let go. And I honestly thought when I went into that I was never ever going to run another workshop in my life, that I was never ever going to sit and support anyone to do anything. It was like I was done. I was done. You know, I had no idea what I was going to do next, but I was done. And I also had to go, and if Earth Heart goes into receivership, and if I go bankrupt and I come back and the roof's fallen in and there's brambles all over everything and I'm living as a crazy old woman with 50 cats, so be it. You know, it was like I had to really let go of everything and take this huge risk that I would go into massive debt, that all the people would hate me for dropping them and not supporting them anymore. And, you know, all of that stuff. I was faced with everything, and it was really challenging.
Massively challenging. You've just shared so much, and I just would love to go back and focus in on a couple of pieces and then talk about what happened next, which is very exciting and has a lot to do with sex as well. What happened next, isn't it? What came out, the fruits of your conscious menopause. Yeah. I just want to go back to the beginning when you said, and you know, you just referenced it then, you were having all these symptoms, physical symptoms. So you were exhausted, you needed to rest all the time. Your own, like we all have our own sort of health weaknesses, don't we? And yours are your kidneys. Yeah, for me, it's my digestive system. Your kidneys were really hurting a lot. What else was going on? Brain fog?
Well,
what else was happening?
Yeah, it was mostly the kidneys and everything that kind of spiraled off that. So what was happening was I had this whole calcification thing going on. And that was, you know, my hearing loss was getting worse because my ears were calcifying. I was getting kidney stones. I had zero energy. I got gout at one point, and I'm like, I never drunk anything in my life. I eat really healthy. I was like, I've got gout. What's going on?
You knew there was like a deep imbalance. And how about, were you getting hot flushes and insomnia? Was that part of it for you?
Were insane. You know, I'd rigged up a fan over on my bedstead, and I'd be naked lying there with no duvet on, with the fan on, with a wet towel on me, and still lying there. And you know, couldn't sleep and all that kind of restless. I mean, honestly, it's interesting. It's hard to sort of remember it now, but I remember just a lot of restlessness. Yeah. And so I was, you know, getting all the help I could, like the acupuncture and the herbs and the supplements. But what became clear to me is, you know, the symptoms were an arrow. They were pointing to something. And at first, of course, I wanted to get rid of them. I just wanted to get rid of them, you know. And I was like, don't want HRT. You know, it's just not really me. I'm such a feral creature. So it was like looking at the symptoms on a physical level felt really important. But I thought, I know this is not enough. I know that I could probably manage these symptoms physically and kind of reduce them. But the symptoms, doing that, I'm not going to get to the source of what's going on. So then I started doing the, you know, like the spiritual work, the ancestral work, the kind of core wound, what I call the core wound work, like working with my holy wound. And soon enough got to the father line, you know, because the kidneys, existential fear, and I could feel there was this whole thing going on in my system around the father line. And then I tapped in and got into the mother line, about how all the women in my you know, all the lineage behind me, none of them had done anything around menstruality, of course. You know, they were all quite like patriarchal women actually in this sort of superwoman paradigm. And I was like, oh God, right, I've got to break the chain here, because I had done exactly the same thing. So I'd say the bigger piece of work that I did that really made the shift was doing that ancestral work, was really looking at what is going on in my kidneys is an absolute expression of what's going on in this line that has not been addressed, of which I am just doing, you know, the next incarnation of. And that was really, really key in it all. And once I did that piece, my energy changed. I could feel the energy start to shift. And I could feel like energy starting to come back into my body.
And that was happening in your 13 moons year. That was a big part of your
No,
13
that
moons
sort
year,
of
that
came
coming up
later
to
down
it.
the line. I feel like that first year, the 13 moons, I did quite near the beginning actually of my menopause. So it was almost like that was putting the roots in the ground. That was kind of planting the seed. And then I came out of that.
Well, let's pull
yeah.
back, because there's a few more questions I want to ask first before we talk about coming out of it. But that's really, really interesting to hear. And I feel like we could have a whole conversation about ancestral line healing and menopause, and maybe we will.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what we get to in the conversation. But I just wanted to come back to talking to trees.
Yes.
So for those, I talk to trees, and maybe many of the people listening also talk to trees. But I just wanted to lead into this a bit because, you say it so haphazardly, like, yeah, chatting with the trees. But what happens inside you when you're talking to a tree? Like, is it, how does that process look like? Because for people, I'm just thinking of people who are in menopause, who are looking for help and for signs from the natural world, how to be in that kind of dialogue.
Yeah, and thank you. And I think that, that connection I've had has been there since day one, because my childhood was so awful and horrific, that I very quickly figured out that nature didn't have all this human stuff going on. Like, I felt very accepted. I felt very safe in nature. And, I'd go down, to the little park or down to the bottom of the garden or whatever, and I'd talk to nature down there. And as a little child, like 5, 6, 7 years old, I thought everyone did. I mean, I just thought, this is what we do. And obviously soon realised, a bit later on, that wasn't the case. But there was an experience that I would have where I felt unconditionally held in love in nature. So it became a place where somewhere in my life I could feel loved, safe and held, because it wasn't happening in the human realm, but it was happening in this realm. And so I suppose that naturally made me want to deepen spending time in nature. And because I was just, these beings were showing themselves to me, and because the plants, and I remember like when I was about 5, finding this rose, and I smelled the rose. And I can remember that as I was inhaling the aura, the kind of the essence, the scent of the rose, all the pain went away, all the emotional pain went away, all the suffering, just for that moment that I was inhaling. It was like, I felt like I was infusing the mystery in that moment. I was infusing love, like this rose was just emitting a pure kind of frequency of love, and I was just able to sort of breathe it into my body. And then of course I'd have to breathe out again, and then I'd be back in. I was just, oh God, smell it again, and I'd just be sitting there just breathing in and breathing in. And there was something about that communication, and that would bring me to like gratitude. As I got older, I was like, wow. And then I'd be say walking through a woodland or a forest, and I'd be in some kind of pain, like, oh, my partner's being really horrible, or I've just had an argument or something, I'm just in the pain, I'm in the wound and I'm in the pain, and I can't find solace and I can't find comfort in the humans around me. And I'd be walking through the forest, and I'd just let myself, and I'd be seeing the trees. And I remember one day, and I was about 16, I was like, what would it be like to just receive this tree and just see, what is this tree? Like, what is a tree as a being? What is a tree? Like, what's its essence? And so I just opened myself, like I kind of just opened the front of my body, or I opened my body and said, I'm just going to receive you. And I just had this profound experience of being really, truly seen, like really seen at a core level. And that just kind of like, moved me. I started crying. I was like, oh my God, I think I feel loved by this tree. I feel really loved. I feel. And then there was all these other trees. I was like, oh, well, shall I see what it's like if I say to all the trees, I'm open and available to receiving your love. And I would just get filled. I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And it was like just a safe way that I could experience it. And once I'd made that connection, it didn't seem like a very big jump to actually ask questions. And of course, when I say the tree talks to me, it's not like it comes back in words. It's very difficult to articulate. It's like, I remember when I had my first bleed, and I had this moment. I was in a plant medicine ceremony on psilocybin mushrooms, and I was having this bleed, and it was raining, and I was sitting there, and this blood was just sort of flowing onto the ground, and I was sitting there in the rain having this sort of cosmic, experience. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, this blood, this womb, my womb is connected, and it's got a, and I had just the whole download of the womb consciousness thing, the womb cycle thing. And the rain was talking to me, and the blood was talking to me, and then I felt like the whole, what I call the wombiverse, the cosmic womb, started kind of giving me this download in my room, and I was like, oh my God. But of course, I was with these other people doing this ceremony, and I was only like 17, 18, and they didn't get it at all. So I just felt like, oh God, I'm a total nutter here. But that was where it all began, and it did take me on that journey.
Wow. Which takes us quite seamlessly to this nest that you made. So the caravan, you painted it brown.
I did.
And you called it the caver-van.
The caver-van.
You made the caver-van, but you also kind of made yourself this nest in nature. And why was it so important for you to be really with the land in that way? I mean, it's kind of obvious, having shared what you just shared about your bleeding mushroom moments and about who you are. But yeah, can you just speak to the importance of just being absolutely encased in the earth?
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting one, because I know that for many people it's like, oh, nature's nice, I like going for a walk, but I don't really want to scrabble around on the earth, there's creepy crawlies, so I know it's not comfortable and natural for a lot of people. But I mean, if anyone ever asks me, where's your happy place, I'll immediately go to snuggled up by a fire somewhere wild with my dog, in a sleeping bag, cozy, safe and warm, maybe with a packet of marshmallows. It's like, that's my happy place, looking out under the stars. And it's interesting because, we work on the land, and all of the trainings and all of the workshops and everything are on the land, and the fire is like the central hearth. That's the soul of it all. And sometimes it's raining, and so we've got a sort of semi-covered, beautiful sort of, barn space. And then we've got the earth lodge, which is a more covered. And then we've got the temple, which is like a proper indoor building. So they all are increments of sort of indoorsness, if you like. Each one of them takes us one step further from, I'm just sitting on the earth now and the sky is above me and there's nothing in between. And one of the things that came out of the menopause that I started to realise, and I knew it before, but it was just non-negotiable now, is that the more I am just literally sitting on the earth with nothing between the sky and the earth and me, I feel the most resourced. Like if we're sitting in circle, say, sharing circle, if we're sitting around the fire and I've got the fire in front of me, and I've got the earth below me, and I'm literally on the floor, and the sky above me, I can hold space for, say, 4 hours and feel completely resourced and feel fine. If we move to the semi-covered space, which has still got a natural stone floor, but it has got like an artificial roof, like it's, a sort of metal tin roof, I'm like, oh, okay, I could probably do 3 hours. And then I start to feel like, okay, I think I need to resource myself now. If we go into the temple, I'm like, I can do 2 max. Because there's, concrete underneath, wooden floor. I mean, it is a turf roof, but, it's got walls. It's like the doors are closed maybe. And I just can see this direct correlation with the more deeply I'm embedded onto the earth with nothing in between, the more resourced I am. And it's that simple.
Your menopause called you, or your symptoms were pointing you to something, and your menopause called you to the thing, which was the thing that would be able to heal you.
Yeah.
Which is being in absolute direct contact with the elements.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly. And the thing is, this has always been true all my life. But what happened before menopause is I felt like I can't force people into doing it this way, even though I feel passionately that it would help. I felt the pleaser in me, or the kind of, oh, well, I'm not, that I wasn't in my power in the level. But I got to menopause and I'm like, well, I don't care. This is non-negotiable for me. If I'm going to hold space effectively, this is what I need. And I passionately believe that this is going to be a huge help, especially to women. So, and it's like, where it brought me in my journey with power is one of the big things that happened during that 13 moons was I was being asked to step up and, I was being shown all of this stuff that I was supposed to be bringing through, like teachings, new ways of working, new practices, new models, deeper models of the cycle wheel and stuff like that. And some of it I was like, whoa, you got the wrong person here. No. I'm not ready to say that kind of edgy stuff. I'm not ready to speak. That's going to be really challenging for people to hear. That's going to be really poking. It's sort of, and but I was being asked to, and it was like I had to face my relationship to my power, and how much was I willing to step into the next level of power in me and go, do I dare to speak this stuff, knowing that it's going to get challenged, knowing that people are going to find it difficult. And I think that what the menopause gave me was that kick up the arse with the power wand, to go, if you don't do this, what is your life going to look like? You're going to feel deeply unsatisfied because you're out of alignment with what's being asked by the mystery, by nature, coming through you. You're being asked to voice this stuff, to bring this stuff, to embody this stuff. And it was all stuff that I had been sort of cooking in the background over my life. But of course I had that voice. Who are you to say this stuff? Who are you to bring this stuff? Who are you to say you know anything about this? You're nobody. Get back in the gutter. You're just a woman. All my childhood wounds. I'm not worthy, blah, blah, blah. So what that meant, what that 13 moons did, was it kind of forced me to come back into myself, look at my power and go, if you don't do this, what does your life look like going forwards?
If you put that into the context of it being a spiritual death and rebirth, it feels like your menopause was saying, well, that voice in you that's saying, no, who are you to do that, has to die. And if it doesn't die, you're going to be living a bit of a semi-death anyway.
Well,
if you want to be reborn.
Yes. Yeah, because it was like, when I was negotiating about, letting everything of this go, what came back really strongly is, Jules, if you carry on as you were, you're dead anyway.
Right.
So what have you got to lose? And I was there like fingernails scraping down the cliff. I don't want to let go. I don't want to let go of everything that I thought I was. It's like, I've spent my life building this sense of self and my gift in the world and all. And it's like, you're saying, let go of it all? Yes, we're saying let go of it all. It's like, no!
So let's look at what did happen, because you obviously are here, very vital, very much alive, very much still doing really powerful work in the world. So what did it look like, when you came out of this 13 moons time?
So what there's lots that came out of it, but the kernel of it, I would say, is that it wasn't in the end that I was no longer going to be, an advocate for change on earth or, run women's leadership programs or be a part of the great change and work with people and run work. It wasn't that I was going to change any of that, but what had to change was how I was doing it and where in me I was doing it from. And that's what changed. So I had to change my relationship to my power, to go deeper into, it was almost like a deeper surrender. So less of the I, like, well, I this and I'm, like less of that sense of sort of my ego self, if you like, my magnificent me sort of thing, to more surrendering and trusting that whatever was coming through me was not really me actually, and that my body is just this channel for something. And sometimes stuff comes out of my mouth, I'm like, where did that come from? Because I definitely don't have the wisdom around that stuff. But something is just being spoken, and it comes in what I call feminish, because it doesn't, it's not necessarily even in words. It's like there's a feeling or an energy or a physical something that wants to move, and it comes through sound, or it comes through song, or it comes through words that don't necessarily logically make sense, but they're felt. And not apologizing. That was the big thing. It's like before, if I would say something that I felt was like, whoa, that's a bit challenging to the collective narrative, you know, I'd sort of try to sort of wrap some cotton wool around it and sort of, you know, fluff it up a bit, make it a sandwich, you know. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't feel a need to apologize. It's like, here it is. This is it. And I get it's difficult, but here we are. You know, to not do this is kind of like you say, I'm out of alignment with myself, and it hurts. It actually hurts. Yeah. You know, my heart hurts to not say it.
Yeah. And one of the truths or the ways of changing the mainstream narrative has really been about sex in menopause and in postmenopause life. And you're bringing a really radical and liberating approach to this, you know. And I had the honor of being with you, like sneaking in there as a cycling woman, just being there and being present to the course that you did around sex and the menopause, and watching the impact for people of your teachings around what's actually happening, around what's happening inside our bodies when it comes to sex in this time of our lives. So could you walk us into sort of the essence of that work and how it landed in you on the other side of your menopause?
Well, look, there's so much I could say on this, but what I feel is like the kernel here in context of this is, for me, and this has been the case all my life, it's like sexuality for me is spiritual energy. You know, yes, we might be lovers with someone and we might explore beautiful pleasure and, you know, all of that. But that's such a small part of sexuality. It's like our sexuality is our creative life force. It's our spiritual kind of emergence, you know, and in the wheel of the teachings, sexuality sits in the autumn of the cycle, and in the life arc of woman, sexuality sits in the autumn.
Let's just hang on, pause you for a minute, because when you say the wheel of the teachings, just tell us what you mean by
cycle,
that, so that
like the monthly cycle, and you know, like the cyclical teachings, the Womdala cyclical teachings. So, you know, you've got the monthly 4 inner seasons, and then you've got the life seasons of woman.
I mean, you say this as if, like, you know.
I know.
We'll do a whole episode on Jewels Wingfield's Womdala.
Yeah.
But okay, for now, you're talking about a map of teachings that you've created around the menstrual cycle and around the cyclicity of life and nature.
And sexuality sits in the autumn of the wheel of the cycle.
Yeah.
So it sits in the premenstrual phase, the inner season of autumn, and it sits in the autumn of the life arc of woman. And women often go, what? Sexuality in the autumn? Like it sort of menopause, but isn't it all over then? Isn't that when all that changes and we lose our desire for sex? And shouldn't it live in the maiden? Shouldn't it live in the sort of mother creatress life? You know, and they're really confused by this. So, but the thing is, if sexual energy, if our erotic, that deep erotic feminine current that I talk about, if that is source energy, if that's creative life force energy, if that is ultimately a vibration of love, which is what it is, when we're in the maiden years or the creatress years or the sort of cycling years, we're so driven by that estrogen cycle and the drive to reproduce and the drive to tend to earth and to tend to life, to nurture and care for life, which is what estrogen does. You know, that's the driver. It's like the spirituality only really comes into play once we're in the bleed and once we're in that premenstrual time, when we start to move into that holy space and move to the other side, move through the veil. So it's going to be the same with the sexuality. So when we're in sexuality in the spring or the summer of our life, it's much more about being in life and the tending to life and the expression of life and the creativity of life. But when sexuality is embedded in the autumn of our life or in the premenstrual menstrual time, it's more connected to spirituality, because we're preparing for holy space, we're preparing for the bleed, we're preparing for death, we're preparing to be the wise crone, we're prepared, we've got depth, we've got wisdom, we've lived this cycling years. So why would sexuality be the exception? Yeah. So for me, what I see happening when women get to menopause in terms of sexuality is, up until now, their sexuality has been estrogen driven. So it's like, and because they don't have the kind of the wisdom and the power that a menopausal woman has, the strapline is, okay sex is better than no sex. Now, of course, I'd love to have amazing sex. We always want to have like amazing sex. But if that doesn't seem like it's on offer, or we don't know how to create it, at least we're kind of having something, yeah? It's like, yeah, it's still nice, it's still lovely, it's still sweet, and it's still, maybe there are moments where it's amazing, but it's definitely better than nothing, yeah? It's kind of still nice, yeah? And it's not great, and I really wish that they would do this bit more and that a bit more, and I wish that, what happens when we get to the menopause is estrogen just disappears, right? Estrogen is like, that's the big one. So, and commonly known in slang terms as the accommodating hormone. So accommodating drops away, and it's like we take a truth pill, and suddenly we see what's been going on. And the strapline flips from, I'd rather have okay sex than no sex. It flips to, I'd rather have no sex than okay sex.
I'd rather have no sex than okay sex.
Because it's too painful in my body, in my psyche, in my spiritual alignment to not be met in the fullness of my power, in the depth of who I am, in this spiritual realm. Because I'm now not busy with procreation, with that wild driving force to nurture life. I'm now focused towards nurturing and tending to the mystery and being a vessel for the mystery, for spirit, or whatever word we want to use for the holy. And sexuality becomes that too. So now, to enter into sexual intimacy, we're entering into the temple, we're entering into holy space. And you can't compromise on that. You can't compromise on that. It's like, entering the temple with muddy boots and swearing and blaspheming, and, we're going to enter holy space. It would be like going into the forest and just leaving our litter everywhere. We're not going to do it. Now, the body points women to this, because women often say they get to menopause and they go, I've gone off sex, I couldn't be less interested. My vagina's dried up, everything's shut down, not going there. And maybe
the story, what I hear regularly from women in our community is that just my libido has gone. I just don't have a libido.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, for example, women who've been in 40-year marriages have done the sort of very traditional, I was told I should just get married, sex was kind of good at the beginning, but now it's a bit of a kind of just, we just do it, or we don't anymore, whatever. But it all feels a bit duty-based or obligation-based and so on. And she hits the menopause, the estrogen falls away, and she gets this truth pill like, oh my goodness me, I've been overriding myself, putting everyone needs, why am I doing this stuff? And then she leaves the marriage. Because it's like, because the man isn't meeting her in where she's stepping into this wake-up call, because he's totally terrified, because the poor men have not been given any kind of teachings around this, so they're just like, whoa, what's happening? It was okay before, what's going on,
Or I think the alternative, sometimes the relationships end, but sometimes there's just a quiet feeling of sort of fading away.
Exactly.
That can happen too.
Exactly. Yeah. So sometimes she'll end that, and the body starts to point to, the vagina, the walls of the vagina become thin, And that's important because, of course, very painful. It can be very painful to have sex at that time. But that thinness of the walls is, in my experience and what I feel is to be the case, is representing the thinness of the veil. So now sexuality is not friction based. It's not physical kind of, oh, touch me like this and let's, go in and out and have all those nice sensations. It's energetic. Because we're in this firmament, we're in holy space, we're in the temple, we're in the subtlety of life, we're in the mystery. So sex also becomes energetic. So her body is directly pointing to that. I can no longer have this sort of lie back and be sort of banged into the ground, kind of basic physical.
Well, you talk about like the friction sex, the sex that's about, or like, just the very physical in out kind of sex that many people have been used to.
Yeah, so friction sex is often no longer an option because of what's happening physiologically. But what's happening physiologically is it's like the symptoms are the teacher. The body is trying to show us you got to shift to something different. And the woman might actually really want that, but she doesn't know she wants that.
Yeah, because what in our world, apart from Jewels Wingfield, is pointing us to that,
Exactly.
There's no one on the telly is going to say, now, partners, it's time to change the way you're having sex with your menopausal partner. It's not part of our education, it's not part of our culture.
And what I've seen is when working with menopausal women over many women now, they come with and they present like this, and when we do the work and she gets to a place where she can identify, like, it starts with, if you could have a lover and it could be any way you want, what do you actually want? And I start by saying, I don't know. But, we spend weeks, months, whatever, really getting to that. And she clarifies, she gets to a place of, well, actually, yes, if I felt I was being really, really met in the ways that I'm longing to, which I don't even dare to let myself long for because I don't think in a million years it'll ever happen, etc., etc. But, once she plugs in and really goes, oh yeah, actually it's not that I don't want it, it's just that what I want now is really different. And there's very few people out there who know how to meet a menopausal woman in her full sexual power, and that includes her sexuality. But when she is met there, lo and behold, suddenly her libido is rising again, her vagina is feeling juicy, she's able to enjoy, and sex, I want to say, for me personally, on the other side of it, is a whole different ball game, and it is, I can't even begin to compare it to the kind of sex I had before menopause.
That's good news.
That's what I want to the message I want to bring is that there's good news here, because the narrative, as you say, culturally, is that once we hit menopause, basically we're invisible as women. It's over. And then the tragedy is, we hit menopause, and of course everything starts to sort of travel south, and you get all the lines and then we try to stay like maidens. Yeah, we go and we say, oh, should I get maybe I'd start to, and it's really tragic. And the other thing I want to point to, which I think is really taboo, but it's important, is the relationship between the menopausal woman and the maiden, because they were the ones that originally initiated the maidens into their sexuality. And the menopausal women were the ones originally who initiated the young men into their sexuality. And there's a huge piece here, a relationship between the young men and the menopausal women. And there are apps out there, there are groups, there are all kinds of things going on where young men are seeking out older women to be initiated sexually, and it's all underground at the moment. It's all taboo because it's so taboo culturally, because these young men, they've realized these women have got something, because they're less busy with, do I look sexy enough, and all those insecurities that we have, and they can feel that these women are like, I'm not going to fucking mess about with this. It's like, you either meet me or you don't. this is where we're going. There's a depth in her if she's done that work and she's connected. There's a depth in her and an intimacy and a calling to that holy space that they're hungry for. You know, they love that challenge. Whereas the men from my generation, they're in the old school. They've not been showed anything, and they're just completely like, they're just lost to know how to meet them. So what happens for menopausal women who do this work and find their way to get connected to their sexuality, they start seeking out the young men because they're also feeling like these men are meeting me. They're meeting me and they can sustain that gaze. They've got enough warrior energy that they're like, whoa, I can see you're going to cut my head off here and cut through all the bullshit, but I'm up for it. Because I can feel the call to awakening through it, you know? And also the other thing to say, menopausal women in their sexuality at this time often go and explore all sorts of stuff that they've never explored. Same gender relationships, same-sex relationships, exploring their own gender. It's like, you know, in Chinese, menopause is called second spring. It's that time of the maiden again. It's like, you know, who am I now? Who am I now? You know, and of course, as we know, whatever happens at the beginning of a cycle influences how a cycle plays out. So this time of menopause, it's so fundamental what we do at this time, because we are literally laying the ground. We are putting in the roots for the second half of our life. So if we don't tend to our health, what's going to happen? You know, if I hadn't tended to my health, I think I would still be sick the way I was. You know, if I didn't tend to my sexuality in the way that I did, I don't know how I would have got it back. You know, it's like, it's so key and so important, because we're literally in a death and a rebirth. We're redefining who we are as women. And this second half, I mean, so far, I got to say, I mean, like, hard to know when I came out of menopause. You know, it's like, oh, when did you come out of menopause? It's like, well, I'm not sure exactly. You know, sometimes I still get a hot flush, whatever. But I got to say that what's on the other side of this, I am loving life in a way that I have never loved life. I feel so alive, so vital, so comfortable in myself in a way that I didn't before. It called me to do such deep trauma work that I hadn't been able to get a hold of before. Like, I'd done a billion workshops and loads of therapy, and I'd done a lot of work, but there was something that opened in the menopause journey that made available to get to a depth of my wound that I couldn't get to before. Yeah. That meant that I can now more easily, it's still a challenge, sit in this power that I spoke about earlier without feeling like I have to apologize quite so much.
Unfortunately, with the plane that's passing overhead, it's sort of signaling that we need to wrap up our conversation. But it's fascinating to hear you speak, Jewels, and so exciting and liberating. And I can definitely feel that the filters and the guardians on your voice have been removed, because what you're sharing is radical and really important. For people listening who are interested in working with you, could you briefly share what you're offering at the moment, especially for menopausal women?
Yes, so there's two strands. The main strand is after 30 years of working with women, I'm now sort of pretty much solely focused on leadership. And just to clarify what I mean about leadership, it's nature-based feminine leadership, and that isn't just for women who are maybe, like you, doing amazing big things in the world, but leadership is how we literally lead our own lives as women, how we step up in that deep feminine current in the world right now, whether we're parenting, whether we're doing something in our community, how we do relationship, whether we're running a project. So it's really looking at what is feminine leadership, and that's including the whole arc of all women, whether you're a menopausal woman or a maiden. We're all coming together in that circle and finding those ways, and that's a 13 moon journey. So it's over a year. It's here on the land. Women come and we spend time around the fire, and we bring these cyclical teachings that I was referring earlier on, the womb-dala. And I only work with a limited amount of women per year, because I've recognized my capacity. Like, I know what I can hold now and I know what I can't. And I give everything to those women. Like, I really just give everything that I've got to that circle of women. And the other strand is once a year at the end of the autumn, just to directly mirror the menopause, I run a weekend called Autumn Queen here at Earth Heart, so that we can really work with the energies of that autumn time. And we go deeply into a lot of what I've just been sharing about, like menopause in the context of a spiritual death and rebirth of who we are, everything about who we are as women, and how we lay the ground for the second half of our life. I think that's at the end of November, last weekend in November, something like that. And the 13 moon year long journey begins in the spring, so I think the next one begins in April.
Wow. Well, thank you. That was an amazing conversation. And there were, we could talk for hours more, and we will have another conversation about the cycle. Is there a final thought that you'd like to leave us with, for perhaps for someone who is in the thick of the menopause initiation right now and is looking for, something to support them with their next step?
Oh, yeah. So my heart goes out to you, because I know how the symptoms can just feel overwhelming, and they kind of dominate. It's like I almost can't think about anything else because the symptoms are just so strong. And my most powerful thing was shifting my focus to, rather than feeling like I had to get rid of the symptoms or get over the symptoms or tough out the symptoms, was seeing the symptoms as a spiritual teacher that was trying to point me to something deeper in terms of the inner work on my psyche, emotional, energetic, kind of karmic self. And that's not to ignore the symptoms or tough them out. We need to really take care, but to ask those difficult questions. What actually, is there a way these symptoms are pointing to something deeper than just what's happening on a physical level, and how can I meet those, and what support could I get?
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Jules. I'm really looking forward to part 2.
Thank you, Sophie.